it seems that there is a massive psychological operation unfolding, particularly within the West, within the Anglosphere, wherein some of these issues that we have begun to lacerate ourselves over and really self-flagellate over are quite, they're kind of silly, to be honest. And my, race, all of the discourse around race, all of the discourse around gender, particularly around gender, is what really made me begin to scratch my head. My contention, or perhaps not contention, what I suspect is that this is a psychological operation designed to sow discord within the West. Where it's coming from, I'm not sure. Perhaps Russia, perhaps China, probably not so much Iran, but perhaps some combination of the three they're in, or other actors. But I think that the discord in the West, the denouncing ourselves over issues related to race, issues related to gender, issues related to the value of liberal Western democracy, issues really, all this discourse about slavery. It seems that we have begun to criticize ourselves in our institution in the West. We've begun to criticize ourselves and our institutions in such a way that it delegitimizes any criticism we want to give towards totalitarian governments and human rights abuses abroad. So how are we to tell China not to round up and kill Uyghurs when we ourselves are apparently an incredibly racist, incredibly sexist, incredibly unfair, unequal society founded on abhorrent principles and abhorrent institutions like slavery? It seems, and I mean, our enemies are enemies. Our geopolitical rivals are emboldened by this, saying, who are you to tell us what to do when your own citizens are complaining about how racist and how unfair and how unequal and how there's no meritocracy, where, take care of your own garden before coming into our garden and telling us how to run our society that has a different ethnic makeup and, our stuff. And I think this is a bullshit argument, of course. I don't think that a lot of these issues have merit, or that they don't have merit in the way that people think they have merit. And I think that it began as something strategic, right? As a way to strategically sow discord in the West so as to delegitimize any criticism that we would level against, related to human rights, related to ever in other countries. But here's the head scratching part, Konstantin. I think it started as something strategic, and now I sort of have a picture of guys sitting around, drinking, probably not pints, but drinking, whatever they're drinking, and just laughing their asses off, watching, people fight over having 20 different pronouns, having, biological men competing in women's sports, and watching people, red in the face, like screaming at each other, watching the U.S. kind of crack up a little bit, having all this hatred. You have a lot of it in the United Kingdom as well, though I think it's a different strand. It's a different flavor of the same milkshake. But I think like some who's the bearded Twitter guy from he's one of Ben's guys, Matt Walsh. The Who Is a Woman. That was funny, going around to like, what do you mean? I don't understand the question. It seems like it started as something strategic, the sowing discord, and now it's just like they're laughing. They're like, these fucking idiots. This is what they're talking. This is what they're arguing about in America. Like this is, the as far as cultural mercantilism goes, the cultural capital of the world, whatever. Like this is what they're, and I envision a group of guys in a room. And again, I'm not to be too conspirational. I don't think it's necessarily one small group meeting that they have on April 16th every year, where they're, drinking schnapps and saying, how far can we, like, look at how far we push this. But I see like the new issues that pop up, that especially the quote unquote youth, of which I'm a part by virtue of my birth year, are arguing about, are really silly, in that they got to this state of how far can we push this? Like, surely people aren't gonna go, like, this is too far. People aren't gonna buy into this. How far can we push it? And then people did buy into it. And Twitter and social media is an instrument by which they enacted this. But I don't know. What do you make of all this? Like the strategic discord thing, and then also the nefarious comedy thing of how far can we push this?
Interesting. Are you familiar with a guy called Yuri Bezmenov?
I am not.
You're going to enjoy his videos on YouTube. He was a KGB defector who fled the Soviet Union, I think in the late 70s, via India, went to Canada, and eventually started giving lectures about what he called demoralization. And his I was going to say thesis, his assertion was that the Soviet Union was spending almost all of its intelligence budget not on, getting microfilms of American bridges or nuclear facilities or whatever, but it was rather spending almost all of its money on destabilizing the core fundamental values and institutions of American society. And it was
through covert means, sowing discord from within,
through influencing the media, through influencing labor relations, through influencing education, particularly. And his essential idea was that what you do is you encourage useful idiots in the West who think communism is great or whatever to become more vocal voices in the society and undermine the existing values of that society. Now, do I believe that all of this comes from foreign interference? I don't. And actually, even Bezmenov himself sort of said that you can't demoralize a society that is unwilling to become demoralized itself. And I think the truth of this is that for whatever West, whatever the enemies of the West, and I think you're right to use that word. You said it and then you laughed, and this is what we do now in the West. We've forgotten that enemies exist. We've forgotten that people in Russia and people in China absolutely see the West as an enemy, but we've become uncomfortable in recognizing that reality.
I have friends in these countries. It's not the citizens; it's the governments.
It's the governments, but increasingly they will get their citizens to see things that way too. People in Russia, increasingly, not all people, of course, every society has different groups within it. People in Russia increasingly do see the West as the enemy. And that's because they're being told it's the enemy over and over and over again.